Not all meats are equally beneficial. Some can do much more good and some, on the contrary, can do more harm. That being said, some points may come as a surprise. In this video, I've compiled a ranking from the healthiest types of meat to the most harmful. There will be 5 categories in total. The healthiest is at the top and the most harmful is at the bottom. So be sure to watch the video to the end. It will be interesting and informative. Okay, here we go. By the way, friends, do not forget to subscribe to my channel and click on the bell to not miss new releases. So the first item is chicken. Yes, chicken meat comes in many forms. There is chicken breast, quite lean with a low fat content. There is the thigh, it is already fatter, and there are chicken legs. In general, chicken meat is rich in niacin, that is, vitamin B3, contains selenium, which is necessary for the normal functioning of the immune system and thyroid health. Chicken is well digested, but there are minuses. In particular, it is often criticized for its antibiotic content. The mechanism is as follows. The chicken is given antibiotics to make it grow faster, and as a result, they remain in the meat, which we then eat. And further antibiotics, getting into the intestine, can negatively affect the microflora. They continue to destroy bacteria, including useful ones. Although now it is increasingly possible to meet more expensive chicken, grown in cleaner conditions, but firstly, it is expensive, and secondly, you cannot always be sure of its quality. After all, you still cannot check in what conditions it was actually grown. Therefore, taking into account all the pros and cons, the chicken is rated good. It's not a bad product overall. It's not the healthiest, but it's far from unhealthy either. Moving on, the next item is turkey. It is similar to chicken, but the flavor is more neutral. The protein content is about the same. Turkey breast is also lean, almost no fat. It contains tryptophan, which is important for the nervous system and normal sleep. Turkey is a good source of zinc and iron, which has a positive effect on hemoglobin levels. It also has B vitamins, especially B6 and B12. They are very important. But let's be objective. Turkey also has disadvantages. For example, industrial turkey often goes through salt solution treatment. This makes the meat juicier but increases the sodium content. There is also an opinion, although not everyone agrees, that turkey contains fewer antibiotics than chicken. Overall, considering all of the above, turkey gets the highest rating. Very good. Moving on, the next item is ham. Well, some people like the taste of it, but it doesn't really have a lot of positives. But among the minuses, stabilizers, thickeners, phosphates, flavor enhancers, high sodium content, as well as nitrosamines, which are carcinogens. In addition, there are added starches and sugar. Overall, ham gets a rating of best avoided, which is the lowest rating. Moving on, the next item is beef. On the plus side, beef is rich in iron, zinc, vitamins B12 and B6. It also has creatine, which is important for physical activity, and the amino acid carnitine. There's enough protein in there too, although, however, almost any meat has plenty of it. On the downside, of course, there are lean cuts of beef, but in general it is fatter than, for example, chicken, and it is digested a little more difficult. And of course, it's red meat. It is believed that its excessive consumption is associated with an increased risk of atherosclerosis and colon cancer. Although here, of course, everything is not so unambiguous. In general, beef receives a rating of acceptable. Experts recommend eating no more than 12 ounces of beef per week. Let's move on. The next item is pork. Pork has its pluses too. It is a good source of protein and B vitamins. There are lean cuts, for example, tenderloin. It is not fatty at all, but in general, pork is considered a rather fatty meat. Yes, you can eat pork, but of course in reasonable quantities. That's why pork gets a rating of sometimes you can. The optimal portion is up to 12 ounces per week, no more. Moving on, fish. In fact, you could make a separate video about fish and consider different types in detail. But here, we will give a generalized assessment. Most studies show that fish is one of the healthiest sources of protein. In addition to the phosphorus and omega-3 fatty acids that everyone knows about, especially abundant in fatty fish like salmon, fish is usually low in saturated fat, yet rich in important vitamins and minerals. Overall, fish receives a rating of very beneficial, the highest rating. Moving on, the next item is bacon. What are its pluses? Well, it does have a certain amount of vitamins, and maybe someone likes its flavor. Let's put that in the pluses too. Now for the cons. And this is where it gets pretty sad. Bacon is probably one of the most unfavorable meats you can have on your plate. It has too much saturated fat, salt, and nitrosamines. Overall, bacon gets the lowest rating. Best avoided. Moving on, rabbit. On average, it is fairly lean. It also contains B vitamins like many other meats. Rabbit meat is well digested, but there are some disadvantages. First, it is not the most common and available product. Secondly, it has a rather specific taste, which is not to everyone's liking. In general, rabbit meat gets a high rating. Good. Let's move on. Lamb. Lamb is a red meat that contains iron, zinc, B vitamins, and linoleic acid. But there are downsides. As a rule, lamb is a fairly fatty meat and can be quite hard to digest. It is not well accepted by everyone. When it comes to the level of benefits, lamb is roughly between pork and beef. Therefore, I would give it a rating of sometimes you can, no more than 12 ounces per week. Duck meat. Duck meat is quite a worthy product, especially if you remove the skin beforehand. It is often used in gourmet cuisine for its rich flavor and aromatic broth. In terms of health benefits, I would rate duck meat as satisfactory. There are less wholesome species, but there are also more wholesome ones, so duck is about in the middle. Moving on. The next item is Wiener. Here, in principle, everything is pretty obvious. Any processed meat will always be inferior to a whole, natural piece of meat. Consumption of processed meat is not recommended. It is better to choose a regular piece of meat because processed foods almost always have higher levels of sodium, phosphates, flavor enhancers, nitrosamines, and other additives. That's why Wiener gets the lowest rating, best to avoid. Moving on. The next item is Jamon. Yes, it is originally a whole piece of meat. But since it has undergone a long aging process with a high salt content, it still reduces its usefulness. Jamon is still a processed meat product, and it also contains nitrosamines. Yes, it's a source of protein, but it's not the healthiest possible. Therefore, Jamon gets a rating of sometimes you can have it, but a little bit at a time. To summarize, a whole piece of meat is almost always better than processed foods like ham or sausage. This is a general rule of thumb that works in most cases. The second conclusion is that the healthiest sources of protein are likely to be fish. And the third is that you should favor types of meat that are low in fat. And if you do choose more fatty meat, it's better to eat it infrequently and in small portions. By the way, friends, write in the comments. What kind of meat do you like best? What do you prefer? It will be interesting to read. And if you like this video, then put a like. If the video will collect 100 likes, I will continue to make videos in the same format. I hope for your support. And also subscribe to my channel. I tried hard. And see you on my other videos.